I'm Ivan Sokolov. This is a chess-based DVD, and what we are going to do, we are going to talk about Hedgehog positions. What I will try to do, I will try to somehow identify plans, identify the ideas, and to help you understand the Hedgehog better. Hedgehog is a very complex part of chess. Why? Because whether you are on a side with the more space or on the side with the less space, it is a very difficult kind of play because you have a lot of pawn breaks, you have many things. I will pick up some games from the past, and I will end up with recent games, as recent as the current World Cup, which is finished like a month ago. Let me first start about explaining about kind of positions which I would like to show you. Hedgehog had come from many different kind of positions. What I will try to do, I will pick up a basic coming from the basic position, which is known to most of people. So this is this. Now let's suppose that we play Khan variation. Another possibility is also to play move knight c6, knight b5, d6, and then you're also going to get a Hedgehog type of position. This used to be the favorite way that Anatoly Karpov played his games. We would have these examples as well, but let me first start with, let's say, with this type of play. Push, let's say knight f6, knight c3, let's say queen c7, a3. Another move possible for white in this position is also move bishop e2. This is another move which is possible for white, but I'm not going to. I'm going to get back to this later, because it has to do something a little bit with the chess theory. So a3, let's say d6, bishop e2, b6. Let me just try to come up to a basic position. Let's say castles, bishop e7, f3, bishop e7, bishop e3, castles, rook c1, let's say, knight e7, let's say king h1. Okay, let me first give some small recap about this kind of position, because the plans and the games which we are going to be looking will have this starting position. Okay, let's first start with what are possible black plans in this kind of position. Let's first try to identify black plans. One plan is obviously to try to play with a d5 break. So at some particular moment when black can, to push d5 and to try to open up the position and get a strong counterplay. Obviously black cannot do this immediately because I have this rook on c1 and there is this queen on c7. So if black wants to try to do something like this, he will need some preparation. Okay, one way to prepare it, let's say, could be to play a move like rook c8. Let's say I move queen, queen b8. Let's say I move rook, maybe rook e8. Now position is getting a little bit more ready for such a kind of break. So this is one black's idea. What can be another idea of black? Well, another idea of black which we have seen in many games could be, let's say, to move the king. And this has been seen in many games. And then what I would like to do, I would like to play move rook. And then at some moment push g5. But first I would, let's say, move the king. Let's say b4. Bishop moves. Let's say knight moves. Let's say bishop c7. Actually, I probably should have started, let's say, with bishop d8, b4, bishop c7. I want to get ready to hit, pawn on h2 once this bishop is moved. So let's say bishop back, king moves, let's say knight b3, rook g8. This is another typical plan for for black in such a kind of position. What black would like to do? Well, black would love to push g pawn, and then to play move rook g6, then to place another rook to g8, and to get an attack, because at some stage all the black pieces are going to be involved in attack. How would white love to counter this kind of play? Well, white can try to counter this kind of play, but by with a good timing, playing some move like, let's say, c5. But he needs a good timing for this, because then if you get some position, let's say like this, this can be advantageous for white, because white will take on c5. When white takes on, well, now black doesn't have a free hand to so easily push, because, okay, white can take, and this bishop is a very stupid piece. And I'm threatening maybe rook b1 to try to do some pins. I have this quite a good pawn chain, which is stopping this bishop's activity. Such a kind of transactions are normally quite good for white if white can achieve it, because then black is not in time with his action on the king side. What again? So black also has another plan in this position, which is often played, and it makes sense. And this is the following plan. Let's say b4. I don't want to play bishop c7. Let's say here I can play move, even in this position. I can start off, let's say, with rook e8, b4, and let's say h5. This move at first glance doesn't look so brilliant. Doesn't look so brilliant at all, because you may wonder, what does black want? I mean, he wants to attack white with one single pawn pushing. Really? Is it really so dangerous? But actually, this is very tricky for white, because this pawn on h5 does not bother white very much. And white can, let's say, continue his plan, hoping to prepare move c5. Or different way to try to prepare it, let's say play move knight a4. Because here another plan for white, it was plan of Kasparov in a game versus Kramnik, was actually to place a knight to d3. But now black pushes h4. And now suddenly actually white is facing a very serious dilemma. And something which is not easy to handle in any sort of way. Because, okay, I do not want to allow, let's suppose that I continue my plan to bring knight to d3. I do not want to allow black to play move like h3. Obviously not, because position is going to open. I don't want to do that. Okay, I can easily stop black, but then black gets these very nice squares. Then black gets these very nice squares. This is also what I don't want to allow. So actually this plan is very tricky. Can white stop this plan? For example, when black pushes, when black, let's say, pushes h5 to play simple move like bishop g5. Yes and no, because now after push, takes, queen moves. We have situation that, okay, on one hand, white is maybe happy that h7 pawn doesn't exist, because castling position is weakened. But on the other hand, black is also happy because he traded the side pawn for the central pawn. If white wants to stop black this way, then he needs to be careful actually at the very start. What Rajaba, for example, was in his games versus Topalov. He needs to keep his queen on d1. Why? Because then after I do, let's say, some push, if h5 happens off, let's say first queen b8, I move my knight, and let's say h5. Now I can stop black, because queen is still on d1. It is very important where this queen is, because now h4 is just blundering a pawn, because there is no knight e4 jump hitting a queen. So this is one of the ways for white to stop this plan h4, h5, h4. But on the other hand, obviously, also it limits White's own play on queen side. We would see it in a game between Rajabov and Topalov. Rajabov and Kamsky. And this would be interesting game when it comes to timing and to stopping this kind of push. Black also has another interesting plan in this position, and this is actually to place rooks differently. What is the advantage of that plan? Well, the advantage of that plan is that now actually pawn pushing for a white is not easy. Let's say queen moves, because it is very difficult to push these pawns, because black is more ready for it. It is not played much, but it is played by some strong people. Grishchuk has played it in we will see one game on Grishchuk, though it was a rapid game. And black also now, let's suppose that white is focused on his plan to play knight a4 and to hit black with the c5. Black here has interesting idea to play move king h8. What does black want? Well, let's suppose that white jumps, bishop moves, and white, for example, is heading with his knight to d3. Black can here play a plan which was played by Portish, queen g8. And black still wants to push, black wants to push g5, which, as far as I know, was only played by Hungarian Grandmaster Lajos Portish. I think he's the author of this idea. Later he was maybe followed by some other people. But this is also very interesting. So we are going to go through all these possible plans. And white is also having one particular plan, which is also possible. This is to, let's say, play move like queen e1. And on, let's say, move like rook c8, to simply play move g4. To play like it is a normal Sicilian position, to go for this Sicilian type attack. And this is also what we are going to be busy with, and this is something which is interesting. It was one game which I would show is game of Jordan van Foreest. When he was very young, he was playing World Junior. I was analyzing this position with him because I was his second at the tournament. So this is also a plan which is making sense. And then this would be our more or less basic position. We would also have a look at a position where white builds the same center, but develops bishops differently. Let's say develops like this way. This is what we are going to have a look. This position brings different kind of dynamics. Very different dynamics, because white would like to here play on an attack on a king side. And then also we could have a position which is nowadays just becoming popular. Let's say when in such a kind of position, let's suppose that we play like this. Castles. You back takes, there is rook e1 compensation. Let's say you get something like this. This is also Hedgehog type of position, but very unusual one, because this bishop is standing on a4. Though we had it in a game of Magnus Carlsen versus Radek Wojtaszek, just now played in a World Cup. So we will be busy with this kind of position as well. This bishop now actually can go back, and white tries to play for attack. This is what Carlsen will also do. This is different plan. This is a plan where this bishop is not on e2, and also something which is making sense, and it's good to know. Let's suppose that we have this position. Castle, let's say b6, e7, f3, let's say bishop e7. White here also has a plan, which is sometimes played and could be interesting one. Let's suppose actually that I move my king, knight d7. This is this kind of plan. Castle, push. Knight b3. Why is White doing this? Well, because actually knight on a5 will be a very good piece. Knight on a5 will be a very good piece because it is controlling black pieces. And White is, for example, ready to push his stuff further. Let's suppose that black makes a move. White can move, let's say, rook c1. And now next move, White wants to push. White wants to start pushing those pawns. And if you take, there we move knight b5, winning exchange, because there is a queen. White could even start with the b4. And then with this knight here, okay, if I start getting to push those pawns, this is dangerous for black. So those are, let's say, plans that we will be busy with, and also a few more. I have selected a number of games. But then you might first actually wonder, this a little bit unusual plan that is nowadays very well known, that everybody is doing, not everybody, but a lot of people, this plan to play move king h8 or bishop d8 first. This whole plan, who invented this? When did it start? Because somebody invented this plan. You would be surprised actually that person that, at least to my knowledge, for the first time came with this kind of setup and the plan was legendary 11th world champion Robert James Fischer in 1970, playing at GM Chess Olympia at the game versus Wolf Anderson. This was a plan, I think, for the first time that I played, though Fischer has done it in a different situation. He has done it in a color reverse position. And then he was copied by other players from this typical hedgehog position. So let's first see this game of Fischer. Let's see how did he get done this plan. So Fischer is white, Anderson is black, and we will see Fischer introducing this plan in a color reverse position, and position that will be also a bit different, position where this plan would work to its perfection. Okay, so we see that Fischer wants to play Sicilian, color reversed. And okay, this is more or less what he is getting. Look, this is more or less what he is getting. Knight d2, f6, castle, bishop e6. What do we have here as a big difference compared to positions which I'm talking about? What I was talking about in the intro. Well, one big difference is that this c-pawn is still on c7. And in our normal hedgehog positions, this pawn is on c5. Of course, this dramatically changes, many things. Because with this pawn still on c7, well, the side playing hedgehog cannot dream about playing on the queen side, because this pawn is still very far from it. And to get a counterplay here would be for Anderson very difficult. Fischer's plan will work to its perfection. King h1, queen d7, rook g1, rook d8, knight e4, and now g4. So this is exactly the same plan which people copied later on playing a normal hedgehog. But here it is working to its perfection for Fischer, because since this pawn is still on c7, Black is really having here huge problem to get a counterplay. Really having massive problem, because to push on a queen side, okay, how to push? While on the king side, actually white is quite quick, you know, this rook would come to g3, another rook would come to g1, and then something very bad is going to happen. And this is what actually happened in the game. g6, rook g3, bishop g7, rook g1. Okay, here problem is that at some moment, white is going to open up the position. One possibility to open up a position at any moment could be, let's say, some moves like g5, and on f5 to jump on f6, maybe sacrifice a pawn, open a g-file, and also make this pawn weakness. Another plan can be some move like, let's say, knight h4. Let's suppose that you move king. Okay, knight h4 is also a plan. Why? I would like to play move knight f5. Once I get to f5, okay, my rooks are going to work. So to take a piece will not work. So white is having many ideas here as to how to open up the position. And black has a big problem. Black played here move knight b6, which does not really help. Knight c5, tempo, bishop c8, and now knight h4. Knight f5 is now starting to come in the air. Actually, knight f5 is already a threat. Knight d7. White is the side here who is having an attack. So obviously, being a side having an attack, having initiative, white is not interested to change pieces. Knight e4. Knight f8. You see, black does not have any counterplay. And knight f5. Now black's position is simply going to collapse, because the moment that this bishop is eliminated, and it will be eliminated, okay, those pawns are going to be very vulnerable. Diagonal will open. This bishop is going to become a monster. Bishop e6. Knight c5. Well, the only thing which black can do looks like is to attack this pawn, but this is always responded with knight c5. Knight e7. And now simply takes. And now time to open diagonal. Black position is completely, black is here lost because he cannot prevent this position from collapsing. Diagonal is simply going to open. This bishop will be a monster. I'm quite amazed by the ease that Fischer outplayed Anderson. Now black cannot prevent material losses. Knight f5. Okay, rook f3. b6 takes. King h8. Obviously, he cannot take a pawn. This is clear, because matters would be even worse. Queen is hit and the pawn is hit, so this is not going to work. King h8. Knight e6. Rook e6. And now, of course, white has this beautiful pair of bishops, and white opens up position further. Takes. And now white wins an exchange. d3. Black delays this exchange win, but now he has to give exchange because everything is falling. Rook takes. Queen takes. Well, here black actually could have resigned without losing any sleep, that he did it prematurely, because white is exchange and the pawn up, and still having an attack, because this king is a terrible piece. So actually black has lost exchange on the pawn, and none of his problems have been solved. Well, the rest of the game is of little interest. I will just show the moves. Fischer won it easily. Look, now white is simply increasing the pressure. Wants to open one more file, and then this king is going to get checkmated. Push. King g8, take. Okay, now white is having a dream situation. Is having those two beautiful files which are completely open, this king is a disaster. f4, king moves, queen g5. And okay, now mate is coming, knight d6, bishop d6, and black finally resigned, because black is either going to get mated or is going to lose more material. So this was a game of Fischer where this plan has been introduced and later on was repeated in a Hedgehog. And now I'm going to show the game where this plan was repeated in a Hedgehog position in a game played by former world champion Vishy Anand.